send me a message over Instagram, or I'll send you a message and figure out a time that we can meet up. I will be in your neighborhood, I believe, on Tuesday. I got a bunch of interviews scheduled on Monday, but Tuesday I should be driving down to, I don't know, somewhere in the United States. And I'll be going through your area, so I'm trying to think of a good place to stop. Can't exactly fit a tractor trailer in a regular parking lot, but maybe we can meet somewhere around you and I can sign some books. We can talk for 15, 20 minutes and have some coffee and catch up. So I'm going to, we'll discuss that later on today over Instagram, and I will send you a message. So I can recommend a place. I'll message you. Yeah, it's just got to be a place that's that has parking for tractor trailers. So if you have a place, let me know and I'll figure out something. And to everybody else who's slowly coming in, good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. And I hope you're all having an amazing weekend. I know I've had an amazing weekend. Bridget is here. Hey, how you doing, Bridget? Where are you going? I got secret parking in the USA. Oh, you know what, Bridget? You know what I need help with? I don't know. I found one spot, but I got to go for 2 days. I have to go to Boston again, and for a private dinner one night, and then to see somebody who's going to be speaking the next evening. And as you know, Massachusetts has like no truck stops. It's the worst state in the entire United States for truck stops. So I found a place that I could stay overnight, but 2 nights might be pushing it. So it's right around Highway 95 and 93 where they intersect in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. I got to find a place where I can leave my truck for a couple of days. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know, because I got to. It's important that I see some of these people who are strong supporters of all of us and all of us in the convoy and everything we did. Megan, good morning. John, good morning, brother. Jesse, Jesse, our technology expert, is here. I say that with love, and don't feel bad. I have many friends and family as well who are not as comfortable with technology as I am. So I say that with love, and I say that that I'm here to help you with stuff, including Bitcoin. When we'll slowly onboard you in a way that you get comfortable with it and you're not intimidated. Callum, bought your book for my sister for Christmas. Callum, I love that. I can't thank you enough for doing that. Let me know what your sister thinks of it. Hopefully she'll read it and tell me her thoughts. And if she's kind of on the opposite end of things, if it helps change some minds or reach people, that would be great. Beth, one more thing. A big thank you to Tom Pace for retweeting my answer to the question that Ben hesitated in my interview. All chapters are important. Okay, so I'll explain that for those of you who are on YouTube. You wouldn't have seen this. Yesterday, I did an interview with a startup CEO. His name is Julian Newman. And Julian is, I guess you could say, comes from the other end of the political spectrum, if we're going to do that. But as I've been saying all along, there are lots of people across the political spectrum that it had enough with the authoritarianism and the mandates and all that sort of stuff. And he's a good example of somebody who had concerns about government overreach, despite the fact that he may have different political views. So I was touched when he reached out to me and wanted to do an interview together. We did about an hour long for his podcast. We did an hour long interview yesterday. It was really good. For people who are in the technology space, the startup space, it might resonate with them, because for a bunch of reasons, I know a lot of how that world works. And it was a really fascinating conversation. So he's going to be releasing it on his podcast, but I streamed it live on Locals. So the people who are supporting me on Locals, when I do these interviews, I will do live stream simultaneously when I can. And that's what she's referring to. And at the end, Julian asked of this book if you could tell people which chapter is the most important chapter or encapsulates the entire, tenor and lessons and everything that came from the Freedom Convoy, I hesitated. The reason I hesitated is because it's not a textbook. It's not like it's a long story. So the entire body of the manuscript informs one of all the things around the convoy. So it's very difficult just to isolate one particular chapter, right? The one I suggested, if I remember correctly, Beth, was the chapter 2, Convoy to End the Mandates, which kind of sets the stage. We talk about Bridget in there, actually, and Chris, and the origins of the convoy. But anyways, so it wasn't that I was hesitating. I just wasn't sure. This is the first time I've been asked that question, and I'm not comfortable saying there's just one chapter. So I love you, and I'm going to come sign your book. So thank you. That was, so if you are a subscriber to my locals, honkingforfreedom.locals.com, you can go back and watch that interview. If you're not, please like, share, and subscribe this, and so we can get more people talking about what happened in the past and our freedoms that we have and more freedoms in the future. Diane, what book? This book, Honking for Freedom, the trucker convoy that gave us hope. Go to honkingforfreedom.com, and this is I'll read on the back. This was, Jordan Peterson was nice enough to write the endorsement for the book. So his endorsement was, the Canadian trucker protest in Ottawa attracted tremendous national and international attention and was simultaneously demonized by then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cronies in the legacy media, the minions at the CBC first and foremost among them. What really happened? Benjamin J. Dichter, integrally involved from the beginning, lets his readers in on the story, one that all Canadians should know. Jordan B. Peterson. So if you're a fan of Jordan, as I think most of us are, he was very gracious. I had sent him the manuscript prior to the Bitcoin chapters being completed, and he seemed to support everything that I'd been working on throughout this time. So there you go. Bridget, follow this link. There's no link that's up there. Canadians need a police force that will protect Canadians from tyrant. I would argue we just need less government. How about just less police forces, less governments, more freedoms, right? Jesse, I'm on locals. I don't know how I got there, but ta-da. See, Jesse, we're going to do Techno Hour with Jesse, where you're going to walk everybody through it. Bridget says, 7 days till I get my book. Where did you order from? On which platform? Yeah, Ryan C7, you noticed. And this was important. Jordan Peterson, in his endorsement, he wrote exactly this. The then Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, gives me warm and fuzzy feelings. And that's something to remember. We will, at some point, get beyond the blackface Trudeau era of Canadian politics. And if we understand that that's where we're going, then there's reason for you to have hope, because life does move on, right? And we will move on from beyond him. So, paper claiming that state of the... oh, yeah. I saw this. I should explain this because I've been part of a strategy that utilized this. So this was the article that tried to suggest that people who don't get vaccinated are worse drivers than people who are vaccinated. So firstly, it's complete horseshit, and it's completely false. And I mean, you talk about a non sequitur. That is the non sequitur of non sequiturs. But how did that happen? How did that get to be in a mainstream media publication? Well, I'll explain how this all works, because, again, I've been a part of this in the past. So what happens is you draft a press release around your issue, your topic, whatever it is, your organization, your group. And that press release, you then distribute it to as many news wires as possible. And this is why you see the same fake news stories all over and over again repeated. Because what will happen is, if the news wire picks up your press release, which is the big if. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Depends what's happening in the world. There's a whole bunch of factors. But if you get a news wire, think of it as like, retail and wholesale. When you read the news, you go to like fake news, CTV, that's retail news. But if you go to a news wire, that's wholesale news. Reuters used to be a very famous news wire, and now they're communicating directly. But the point is, they'll go to these news wires. I think Blacklock's is kind of utilizing Blacklock's reports. They're trying to utilize that format, which I think is a good idea, actually, that they have an expensive membership, but it's not designed necessarily for the general public, although that's part of it. The goal, from what I read into it, is to get publications to utilize them as a newswire service or newswire-like service that does investigative journalism, because no newspapers do investigative journalism anymore. So, Newswire picks up your press release. They're always looking for content to fill in the gaps on their newspapers, on their websites, whatever it is. And if you get picked up by one publication, you're going to get picked up by all of them. So I remember, something that I was involved in. We released a press release, and it's prior to the Convoy. And I kind of used this strategy a little bit during the Convoy as well to try to get as much attention on as possible. What they'll do is all of a sudden, like if a Fox News affiliate picks it up, it's because something came from Fox headquarters that this press release or this subscription to this newswire has given them this, and they distribute it to all their affiliates. And that's how you hear the same news story all over the world repeated. And then if the Fox headquarters picks up this press release, then all the other major fake news publications are going to pick it up as well. That's how this all works, right? It's the era of journalism that they're always trying to push more and more journalism. There's never enough stories. So they farm it out to these news wires, and they just copy and paste. They pay a monthly subscription, and then it gets everywhere. In Canada, we have the Canadian Press. That's a good example. If you get a story in the Canadian Press, then in all likelihood, all the main publications in Canada are just going to take that story, copy and paste to their websites, and say, look at the breaking news we bring you. So that's how this process works. Tao says, I'm waiting for the audio version. The story-based book seems best with tone and feeling. Okay, I don't disagree, and you just gave me a lot of work during the Christmas season. I'm joking. I've already penciled in time to focus on recording the audiobook. Kind of the infrastructure is already set up. That's part of the reason I got this and started streaming and set up all the foam around here. That was primarily for the audiobook, so I'd have good enough sound quality. And I figured, hey, why not just start streaming as well? And well, here we are, all becoming a family. Good morning, Jennifer. I love you, dear. Jennifer was with me at the at the Jordan Peterson Conrad Black event that occurred last week, and was actually quite a good talk. I mentioned in my last stream that Jordan touched on artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, and a whole bunch of us are playing with that sort of stuff in the background. And I actually just asked it a question, which I'll talk about in a second. And it was interesting, though. It was what's called sponsored by the Democracy Fund. What was really weird is, and Jennifer noticed this as well. We walked in, and all the ushers and people that were ticketing people and putting on armbands were Rebel News journalists wearing, Democracy Fund T-shirts and swag. That's kind of weird, don't you think? I wonder what's going on behind the scenes there. But anyways, there was a couple of weird things like that. But it was a nice event. They spoke for about an hour and a half. It was mainly Jordan and Conrad Black lobbing a couple of questions at him here and there. And but it was great. And then as soon as it was done, I had to get out of there as quickly as possible. Why? Because I got in touch with Candace Sarrow. Now, who is Candace Sarrow? For those of you who don't know, Candace reached out to me Jennifer, you're missing the best part. I'll let you talk about it in a Twitter space. How about that, Jennifer? It was awesome. Jen and I had an awesome time. It was great. And Tom Pace came as well. Tom's awesome. And Paulette, hello, Benjamin, with you from southern Alberta, which I hear is a beautiful place. My dad grew up in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, and my uncle and cousins were all from Calgary. So I've heard about, I now know almost, not all of northern Alberta, but I went as far as Grand Prairie and got to know quite a few people there. And I do want to hit southern Alberta. My dad used to go to southern Alberta all the time when he was a kid, and he always said it was absolutely beautiful, which is where, what's the name of that town? My grandmother, when she came to Canada, to avoid the Holocaust, she went to a small town in Alberta, and I always forget the name. It sounds like a Spanish name, but it's not a Spanish name. It's a town in Alberta, and it starts with a V. It'll come to me at some point. But I do want to spend more time out there, so hopefully I'll work on that and getting out there. So thank you for joining here. So anyways, we're at the event. I had to run because Candice Saro, she is the woman with the walker who was trampled by the mounted police officers in Ottawa. And so she, as we all know, was all over international news. And she reached out to me over Facebook, which I barely use, but she managed to catch me and I saw her, so we connected. And it's funny, I've been trying to get in touch with her for so long, and she had been trying to get in touch with me for so long. And so I left the Jordan Peterson event, drove home, changed out of my out of my suit, put on my trucking stuff, went to meet with Candice to sign a book for her and give her a copy of Honking For Freedom for Christmas and stuff like that, and just to thank her for everything. And then drive over to my truck, got to my truck at about, 12:30 in the morning, and went to the yard to grab my trailer. It, of course, was blocked by 6 other trailers that I had to shunt and move out of the way for basically an hour, and hook up to my trailer and go to Ottawa not Ottawa, not even, I keep saying Ottawa. It's a place called Johnstown, Ontario. And so that was my day, which was kind of busy. And then, do my reset, get some sleep, do some work, come back, and grabbed another trailer and went back and did the same thing. So things are a little bit busy, and doing interviews in between. So anyways, got to meet with Candice, and on the way back from Ottawa the second time, so this was on, when was the snowstorm? Thursday. Candice wanted to meet up, because we only had like 10-15 minutes to meet up quickly, because I had to run, and she was coming back from the hockey game to go back to where she's from, which is around the Kingston area. So we agreed, let's go ahead and have coffee, because I wanted to hear her full story of everything that happened to her. And boy, I have some breaking news about her that I'm not going to reveal just yet, but really damaging to the Canadian government, I think, in my opinion. And but we'll talk about that sometime soon, maybe on one of the interviews I'm doing tomorrow. Anyways, we sat down on the drive back, we were going to do 20 minutes. We ended up talking for an hour and a half. Very, very nice person, has been through a lot since the Convoy, as we all have, and going to help her out a little bit as much as I can. So if you're interested in, helping me help out Candice and some others, let me know. We'll talk. All right. Lisa says Democracy Fund is run by Ezra Levant. Yes, that's my understanding of it, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is. I'm not going to tell people how they do business. Great. Hopefully, it's all on the up and up. That's really all that I really care about. Yeah. Okay. You guys are all saying the same thing. Anyways. Maybe we should talk about that sometime soon. I'll kind of put a a note on that. So anyways, I will have more information on Candace and what she went through in Ottawa, after being trampled, and she's had a rough go as well as the rest of us have. Okay, now what do we got? All right, well, I'll let people. I'm not going to post the comments. I'll let people read the comments because you guys are all very, very warm about a whole bunch of stuff. And wow, I'm shocked how much you guys are aware of really what's going on, because a lot of this was kind of new to me. So it is what it is. And where are you? Diane, you said you're in California. Where in California are you? Just curious about it, because I was asked to come speak in LA. I don't know if I'm going to, but I'm talking to some people there, and it'd be great to get a dispatch and drive across the country for a week, go meet a bunch of people and give a speech, and meet a bunch of you out there, and then drive back to Canada. In a perfect world, I'll be able to do that. So it is what it is. Okay. The other things I wanted to talk about today are Twitter verification. So I think I am now, I don't have a blue check mark yet, do I? Let me see. Do I have a blue check? So I've subscribed to Twitter Blue, and throughout the convoy, I was using Twitter as the as my primary method of communication between my account and Tamara's account, and the reason was, I knew if we created at that time a Freedom Convoy account, it would have been bad. So, and I explained this in the book, chapter 11. I talk about the media strategy and social media strategy that I was using. But now, I've subscribed and become verified on Twitter, and so should you. And I'm going to tell you why. Irrespective of what, people have a whole range of opinions on Elon Musk. Okay, I'm not going to tell anybody what your opinion should be. Diane, used to live in LA, but now just outside of San Francisco. Yes, let me know if you come. Oh, would love to. Yeah, just San Francisco. You talk about a city that's got some problems right now, eh? But anyways. So I think what Elon Musk is trying to do with Twitter is he's trying to turn Twitter into WeChat. Now, people like Jesse will probably ask, what is Jesse here? Menzies kills me. Yeah, Menzies is hysterical. WeChat is an app that's used primarily in Asian markets, primarily China, but all over Asia. And it's a group chat forum similar to Facebook, but with more with the same group chat functions. But it's also a means of transacting, so you can use it to do payments and stuff like that. And I think, but the problem with it is it's monitored heavily and strictly monitored by the Chinese Communist Party. So much so that during the COVID lockdowns, the hashtag free speech was trending on WeChat, which is run by, is it 1010? The same company that owns TikTok. And very quickly that was censored by the Chinese government because they have full access to their companies there. And it kept popping up, it kept getting censored, it kept popping up, it kept getting censored. So I think what we may see of all that of Twitter is we might see a Western form of what WeChat is, with maybe some of the additional features of YouTube. Because Elon Musk has mentioned he's going to make the platform so that people who do broadcast can monetize their broadcast on Twitter. If that's the case, I think you can kind of say goodbye to Facebook at that point, because I've noticed here the differences between when I'm posting on, a lot of my Facebook posts are kind of automated, but I notice the stupid messages pop up all the time. Oh, the COVID stuff. I'm not even talking about COVID. I say Freedom Convoy, you get a COVID warning on Facebook, and it's all being throttled, right? That seems to be being reversed on Twitter. That's the problem we were dealing with. So I know for some people, Twitter can be really confusing. Jesse, the best way, because you had mentioned to me last time, the best way to think of Twitter is a micro blog. So some people go to blogging websites. What's an example of a blogging website? you're talking about it here in the chat. Rebel News is a blog, right? They have multiple blogs and videos. So this is a micro blog, meaning instead of full articles, your articles are only whatever they're up to now, 300 characters. Okay, that's the strength of it. But I think if we want to avoid censorship in the future, it seems to be Twitter and what I use here, locals, when I'm live streaming, Rumble as well. There are these platforms that are popping up that are alternatives that will allow us not to deal with the censorship that we had to navigate as recently as a couple of months ago, or even more recent. So and because Elon Musk, again, whether you like him or not, took a $44 billion gamble to leverage $44 billion to buy this company to hopefully give us our free speech back, I figure the least I can do as a sign of thanks is give the guy $10 a month, because that's what it is, right? That's my contribution of helping us all get together, irrespective of our personal opinions on certain political ideas. On locals, we have it's Guillaume. Hey, what's up, brother? One of the unexpected after effects of the convoy is that I got a lot more interested in First Nations and their dance with the government. 100% correct. And, during the convoy, I had met with a couple of clans moms, not the ones that Tamara's brought, because she brought some clan moms from the Northwest Territories, but a couple of other clan moms and a chief who was there the entire time, who supported us and supported the right of freedom. And clearly they have grievances with the Canadian government that are ongoing. And it was very interesting. We had at one point a 2-hour-long conversation in the media room, which was the second half of my hotel room, and just to kind of get a better understanding of what their grievances are, and we all kind of understood each other a lot more. So I want to thank Prime Minister Blackface yet again for his authoritarian bullshit, bringing Canadians, whether they be First Nations or Canadians from urban areas, bringing us together and allowing us to talk to one another and better understand each other in our full context, right? So, 100%. I agree, brother. It was really great. And so anyways, back to what I was saying with Twitter. I would suggest all of you, if you're not on Twitter, get a Twitter account, get familiar with it. It's really a good news aggregator in short form. And that's where the discussion is. That's why Musk bought it. Yes, I have a Getter account. I have a Truth account. I have a Minds account. But really, you're having the majority of people are on Twitter because the API, and just so you know what an API button is, when you go to CNN.com and you see, follow us on Twitter or share this, and you can click the Twitter button, and it takes that CNN article and posts it to Twitter. That's an API. And because Twitter and Facebook are the primary platforms that legacy media and the political class have used, that's why it's so powerful if you join it in terms of the pushback. Because before, we couldn't, share just common facts. Now we can, without being censored, right? I saw Unico Tools name pop up here. I don't know why, but anyways, it is what it is. Okay, so with that, if you go and you join Twitter, follow me at BJdichter. So it's at BJdichter, and you'll see this book on the background is kind of my graphic. And I think I took a snapshot of one of the interviews I did on one of the Bitcoin. I think it was Cafe Bitcoin, actually. I just put an image together. It's from the back of my truck. You can see the back of the cab in the truck in the background. That's me. Follow me. Say hello. Send me a message. And if you need any help, let me know. Need any guidance, I'm there to help you as well as everybody else is. So, and by the way, Christmas time, stocking stuffers, you got, a week left until Christmas? You got a week left to kind of help red pill your friends who are in the progressive or liberal echo chambers that don't understand the reality of this. Something else related to this, by the way, of trying to reach other people, is tonight on a podcast that I produce because some of you know, aside from trucking, I also produce podcasts. One of the podcasts I produce is called Not on Record. And Not on Record is Diana Davison, who's a very well-known men's rights activist turned legal researcher. And she deals with falsely accused people or falsely accused cases. And she works with criminal defense lawyer Joseph Newberger from Newberger and Partners. So we've been producing this for well over a year now. And, it's the nuance of what's happening to our legal system, how some of the progressive narrative is changing Canada's legal system. They talk a lot about that and certain rulings, the good and the bad. And it's, by lawyers, for lawyers and regular people. So you can follow it on Twitter, Not on Record, and get the YouTube link. Not on Record Podcast is the name of it. So Joseph is interesting because Joseph has become a friend over since the last couple of years since I met him. And Jesse, thank you. Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to all of you. I hope you have the best Christmas of your life, and you will. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so Joseph was one of those people. He's what do you call a normie? He goes on legacy media. He's often interviewed on legacy media. He wasn't necessarily on board. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but in terms of convoy activism, that's not his thing. He was not really a supporter of that. I don't think he understood the full context of it because he lives in the legacy media world. So I don't really fault him for that and blame him. But Diana did. So kind of it's a good back and forth and to kind of see, all perspectives, which is what I've always encouraged people, that we need to have friends on all sides of the political spectrum so we can communicate what's going on and what our worldviews are. And Joseph is one of those very reasonable people who will listen. And so I was asked by them to actually be a guest on our own podcast and to talk about kind of the legal framework around the commission and much of the things that were going on behind the scenes. And we did that. So that episode is going to air tonight at 8 o'clock. It's a YouTube channel, Not on Record Podcast. And you might find a little bit more of the sort of nuance behind the Freedom Convoy, but also me talking to a friend who wasn't a supporter of it, who might seem to understand, okay, there's two sides to the story, and whether he agrees with that sort of activism or not, I think he kind of understands now that, the right to protest is a human right that we all need to respect for everybody on the political spectrum. So I think it was a great episode. I loved it. And so check that out. And then I think after next couple of days, you may see me all over YouTube because of a couple of interviews I have lined up, but that's a whole other issue. What's the channel? The channel is Not on Record, which is a legal term, Not on Record Podcast. If you go to YouTube, just type in one word, Not on Record, and the word podcast, it should pop up. And there's also a Twitter account, Not on Record, at Not on Record, and you'll find it. I'm still suspended on Twitter. I can't get anyone to reply or cancel my account. It's very frustrating. So, Lisa, yes, you can tell there's a lot of change going on behind the scenes as they're going through some of the bloatware and some of the code that shouldn't be included. Just give them some time. So, for example, they had launched Twitter Blue, and I wanted to get it. That's the subscription model. And then they reversed it, and then they kind of delayed it because there were errors in the code. There was so much nonsense going on in Twitter. There was so many bots that were there programmed to censor that they're still working through all of the mess. So don't be frustrated. Just give it some time, and over time it'll get better and you'll get released. You can try to send something to log on and send something to help. See if they allow it, and if not, wait some time or create another account. I don't know, but just be patient. Give them some time. I'm sure it's going to work out. BJdichter, BJD, that episode with you is up on their Twitter, YouTube as a premiere in 6 hours. Yes, that's the one. So if you go to Not on Record, you'll see the premiere is ready, And at 8 o'clock tonight, it'll be there, and I might even be in the live chat as well. I usually help Max administer the launch and postings and all sorts of stuff. I mean, these are the things I do beyond trucking in the media space. But I will join in the live chat, and I encourage all of you to be in, to come join the live chat. Often Diana and Joseph are in the live chat as well, and you can ask them questions. They are wonderful people and good friends. So let's do that today if you're available. There's another convoy. No, there isn't. Okay. So, Jimmy, here's the problem. No, this has been going on since the convoy. There have been people that have been going across Canada since the end of the convoy, one of whom was an informant and an auxiliary police officer for the RCMP. And they've been trying to bait people into running another convoy because the commission was coming up. Now a report is coming up. The government is desperate for a boogeyman. Having any sort of convoy right now, all that does is it makes the case for the government to say, see, look how dangerous these people are. Right now, the best approach is to do nothing. Just let the process work. Let's see what happens with the report that comes out. Let's not give any ammunition to the political class to pull the victim card. Because as we know, everybody who's in power in Canada, what do? They claim the victim class. They look at anything to be victims, which is absolutely crazy. Anyways, the other thing, I'm not going to talk about that as much today. I got some other stuff I wanted to talk about. We'll forget that. When I mentioned Twitter, so Twitter, in terms of, so you're going to have Twitter, and you're going to have now no longer an echo chamber of the left. You're going to have a multitude of perspectives you disagree with, which was always the case, but you'll find a lot of perspectives you agree with. And one of the things that I try to encourage people not to do is get trapped into an echo chamber and, get involved in a group that's always talking, always just reinforcing their confirmation bias. Jimmy, I hear you, brother. No, it's not, Jimmy, that wasn't a criticism of you, by the way. But just kind of, I want to get the word out to as many people as possible. Don't give any fuel to Trudeau, because we know how the Trudeau regime and the political class, not just Trudeau, how they behave if they see anything that they can spin as a threat. Doesn't even have to be a threat. They just want to be able, they can be able to spin it as a perceived threat, then they will do so and they will use it against us. That's why right now, the best thing we can do is have an amazing Christmas with your family, have an amazing New Year's, be kind to your friends, and family. Talk to them about these issues, and if you're so inclined, a little stocking stuffer that will help get them aware of what's going on. That's I think that's what we need to do right now. My personal opinion. So when you're going to go on Twitter, you're going to find a lot of opinions, obviously, you disagree with, but you're going to see opinions you agree with. Now, I personally don't go down the rabbit hole with people who agree with my opinion, because I know what my opinions are and I know what I base them on. So I always want to hear kind of the other side. But one of the things that we see, this phenomenon, and this is part of the propaganda war that we're all involved with our political class, and that is something coined. I don't know if Scott Adams coined it, but it's the first time I heard this phrase to describe it, and I think this is the best way to describe it. And that is narrative poisoning. Now, what is narrative poisoning? It relates to a fundamental issue that I've been dealing with, and I dealt with my testimony, which is, do people actually want to hear the truth? Do they want the truth, or do they want to reinforce confirmation bias, right? And, I would, my problem is most people don't want to hear the truth, has been my experience. Most people want confirmation bias. And this is why narrative poisoning is so dangerous. So what's narrative poisoning? A perfect example would be Well, the Convoy wasn't so good because I was anticipating this, which is why I took the media strategy that I did. And the legacy media was just deer in the headlights. They didn't know what to do. But usually what it'll be is whatever the issue or story that pops out. Let's take Trump, for example, right? Remember when, there's all these hoaxes about Trump that, like, one of the things was Trump said that you can kill COVID by injecting bleach in you or something like that. It was completely false, right? But once Trump, I can't remember the words that he used specifically, but he suggested something he was giving is questioning an analogy, and he's saying, is that kind of like what bleach does, right? He's trying to simplify it because that's what he does. He takes good persuaders, take complex ideas, and simplify them in a way that we can all understand them. And he's actually pretty good at that, believe it or not. And so in his effort to create an analogy or test an analogy, he said, like, was this like bleach, thinking about cleaning? And what happened? The legacy media, the fake news, CNN, all of a sudden just ran as many stories as they could to hammer him over and over again with Trump says that bleach will kill the cerveza sickness, right? Completely counterfactual. But that's narrative poisoning because they know if they just say it and they write article after article after article after article reinforcing that idea, then their audience will be poisoned with this narrative that is completely counterfactual. And what'll happen is, that's that Mark Twain quote, that the truth goes around the world twice before, a lie gets around the world twice before the truth gets its shoes on. That's why. That's an example of that. That's why he said that. And it's not a new phenomenon. It's just been, it's now on steroids because of the internet and that we can disseminate information globally and instantly. That's the only thing that's changed. So that's an example of narrative poisoning. Another example of narrative poisoning was in the beginning of August when you heard people start going on as many alternative media platforms as possible to say, in Ottawa, the Freedom Convoy had a deal. There was a deal. Do as many interviews as possible to lie to the recipients to make them think that, oh, there was a deal. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know any truckers who drove 5,000 kilometers to hang out for a week and then go home. That just wasn't that way. At the very least, somebody from the government to talk to them, which never even happened because everybody's a coward in our government. All of them, all parties, by the way. It's not just one party or the other. They're all cowards. But that whole narrative over and over again, go on all these different alternative media streams and going on CPAC and all these other platforms and say, yeah, there was a deal and Trudeau reneged on a deal. That was completely false. So what happens is I then go and speak at the commission and explain factually that that is not what happened, and I show, irrefutable evidence in the form of text messages from those very people showing that there was no such thing. And what happens? Do you think showing that data, and this is where I'm going with that, showing that data and pairing it to my testimony, how did people react? Did they say, oh, you know what? I didn't realize that. You know what? I was wrong. I didn't. I should have realized. And now that I see what's happened, now I know the truth. So okay, I take it back. No, of course not. That's not what people do. They double down. Everybody doubles down, and they started attacking me. Right? That's the cognitive dissonance. They're not attacking. They're not addressing the evidence that I put forward. They're slipping into cognitive dissonance and attacking me. Right? And that's because people don't want, often, not always, people get emotionally attached to a narrative through narrative poisoning, through the first narrative that they hear. They get emotionally tied to it. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey, you know what you've believed for the past several months? That's a complete lie. No, can't be. And then they attack that person, right? And that's why, I often ask, do people want to actually know the truth? And this is not, as much as we like to say the left is like this is everybody. This is just human nature. I spoke of the example before of when the new CEO of CNN came on board, and he said, at CNN, we're going to try to shift back to more objective, factual reporting, and we're not going to be as partisan as we've been under the previous leadership. Well, how did the CNN readership respond? They were all on Twitter, right? This was a Twitter announcement. You know what he said? You know what they said? They lost their minds. They started attacking the new CEO when all he said is, we're going to be factual. No, they don't want facts, right? We all want to have, it's an intrinsic nature of us that we need to fight against. Guillaume, who's here in Locals, who I've spoken to many times in many Twitter spaces, is exactly the type of person that for me is an anecdote to that, because he likes to hear all sides of an argument, right? And you need to welcome questioning our preconceived notions and our preconceived ideas and narratives, because we've been primed for them, right? They've exploited us in that they get on, they'll send us a narrative, and we'll accept it because we hear it repeatedly, and we never heard the other side. This is why, Scott Adams was talking about this with documentaries. We've all seen, there's various documentaries around, the cerveza sickness and what went on and all that sort of stuff. And by the way, I'm not sharing my opinion. I'm just talking about communication strategy, okay? These are not my opinions. But, these documentaries either pro or against or whatever in terms of the cerveza medicine. A documentary is the least informative form of communication. If you're watching a documentary, you're not getting information. You're getting a narrative that's very, very persuasive. You know what they're not showing you? They're not showing you the opposing argument, and they're not showing you the people who can explain why what you're being told is maybe factually inaccurate. So documentaries are great. I love documentaries. I've my whole life I've watched them. But they're not actually information. They're persuasive. They'll give you one side of the argument. So if you want one side of the argument, you can listen to that, and but also understand that there might be another side of the coin. And I think if we do that more and more, we'll be better off to be able to communicate with people who are on the other side. And you can test yourself with this. So I'll give you an example. I know there's a bunch of people who watch me from kind of different perspectives on this. Most of you are obviously pro-freedom, Convoy, pro-freedom, anti, what the government did with mandates and all that sort of stuff, and I appreciate that. But if a report comes out, if data comes out, my microwave has a mind of its own, sorry. If data comes out showing that everything that we knew or we believed about the cerveza sickness medicine was accurate, would you want to know? Of course, because you're already sure of what happened with, Fauci and all this stuff around the what happened over the past couple of years. But what if there was also a set of data that showed the opposite, that showed that all of our concerns were just hysteria? Again, it's not my opinion. I'm not saying that. But what if there was data that refuted everything we believed in terms of the cerveza sickness medicine? Would you want to see that data? No, you wouldn't. I mean, naturally, we wouldn't. And that's the challenge, is forcing us to listen to the other side of the argument, to look at data that challenges our own beliefs, because that's how we defend against narrative poisoning. That's why I keep talking openly about the government and the political class and all the parties that were behaved in a nefarious way during the convoy, because I want you to understand that there's more than just the narrative that you're being told. Sometimes there's certain things that occurred. It's the complete opposite, and I don't want you to be subjected to this narrative poisoning. And I promised everybody from the beginning, I'm just going to be straight with you. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you everything. Whether it reinforces confirmation bias or not, I'm just going to tell you the truth, right? And I think if we do that, we're better apt to be able to communicate with people on the other side. Why is that important? Because if we're able to communicate with the lefties in our neighborhoods, the lefties in our family, we're able to share a book like this that tells a story that they never heard or never understood. You know what happens? The government loses all its power. The only way government has its power is if we're set off into these different silos and we're demonizing, oh, liberals and lefties are this, or conservatives are this. All that does is give power to the government. But if we're able to communicate with people we disagree with, but at least we can state our case, and they're willing to listen to us, and we're willing to listen to them, even though we disagree, and be charitable in our communication, then the government has no power, and they won't be able to lock us down and put masks on us anymore. That's what led to this. That's what allowed the government to impose these mandates and put on face muzzies, is we were not able to communicate to the people in our community who disagree with it. And I understand, people on the, let's say, far left, we'd say, although I don't like those terms, but I understand the utility of it. I understand some of them can be quite aggressive and they can be quite emotional. And you talk about confirmation bias. Some of them, that's what they're fueled on. But those aren't the people you're going to reach. You want to reach the people around them, the people who will listen, but, are open to other interpretations. That's how we prevent ourselves from ever having another lockdown, whether it be climate lockdown or cerveza sickness lockdown, any sort of lockdown. We need to talk to our friends and family who disagree with us. That's why I wrote this book, as a tool to be able to open up the doors and open up the lines of communications to people who probably, quite frankly, frustrate the hell out of us. I know, I get frustrated with them too. But just because we get frustrated doesn't mean we can't, calm down, be cool and collective, and learn different ways to approach and reach them. Which is also why I did the interview with yesterday with with Julian Newman, because I knew he came from the other end of the political spectrum. He was open to us because he was frustrated with how the government handled the mandates and forcing people. That was the big thing, just forcing people. And so we found a common ground for us to communicate on. And we need to do that in our neighborhoods, because if not, we'll get climate lockdowns. And this is how we fight against it, right? It's my personal experience and suggestion. So narrative poisoning, don't let it get you. Make sure you understand the multiple sides of the argument. Like Professor Stephen Hicks always says, there's always at least 3 sides to an argument, not 2 sides. And he discussed that in one of our podcasts and a bunch of his writings, because that's my big concern. My big concern is not left versus right. My big concern is no more lockdowns and no more climate lockdowns. No more of this, WF, BS that's coming from all these strategy companies that are just going to destroy our economy and destroy our lives. And the way we do that is we find common ground with people on the other side. I hope I haven't taught that to death. Okay, Truth, a bunch of your comments here. Oh my God, Ben, I was ostracized on a channel because I took your side. People are so blind by what they want to hear rather than the facts. So there you go. And those are those people who are supposed to be on the side of freedom. So they're suffering narrative poisoning. What are you going to do? It's just narrative poisoning. And maybe over time, and that's how I look at it, over the long term, people will start to wake up. But they're going to end up pulling themselves back into a lockdown if they're so hardened with, my narrative is correct. There's many times that I'm incorrect. We're all incorrect sometimes. You believe in something, you understand it, and then okay, that was wrong. For example, when COVID started, cerveza sickness for YouTube. When it all started, for the first couple of weeks, I was like, okay, this is pretty bad. This is pretty okay. Let's We didn't have any sort of lockdowns at that point, but there's certain behaviors that were requested. I never really did the socialism distancing, but masks and whatever. And then after 2 weeks, when I found out that this is all politicized nonsense, and even our members of parliament and provincial parliament are telling me, yeah, we don't know what this is. This is completely politicized nonsense, and the higher-ups aren't listening to us. And I'm like, okay, so... And then you start to look at all the signs, and you realize, okay, this is a political strategy. And this surveillance sickness is being exploited. And then when Klaus wrote, said the surveillance sickness is a great opportunity, and then he wrote this book, the Great Reset, the opportunity that the surveillance sickness was, and the guy's a lunatic. The guy's just mental. That's like, okay, this is all nonsense. But initially, I was open to, okay, well, let's see. Yeah, we all were. Everybody was worried because we remember SARS from the early, when was SARS? 2003, if I'm mistaken. And SARS was truly dangerous. What, it was 30% fatality rate? But that's why it burned itself out so quickly. You know, this is science class grade 6. This is not complicated stuff. But the fact that this didn't die out so fast and was able to spread everywhere, apparently, means it had a very low rate of lethality. So, okay, I remember science class. I wish more people did. But anyways, so we all have to have the ability to change our minds, or at least hear people we disagree with without getting into a fight, even when they're aggressive with us. Let them be aggressive, calm them down. If we do that with people in our neighborhoods, we're never going to be locked down again. And Diane, you live close to San Francisco, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, I bet, because I'm sure you experience a lot of this. I know there's a lot of conservatives in that area, but I know it's kind of like little communities of conservatives, and then a lot of people that are on the more on the opposite end of the political spectrum. And I'm sure you have to walk that fine line too sometimes. That's what I had to do for the years that my business was on a university campus. Right, I had to be and to learn how to communicate with some people who had they're very, very passionate about their opinions about Karl Marx, and that for me is a very difficult one. But I think I managed to over time change some minds. All right, my microwave's going nuts. I don't know why. All right, so I'm going to call it a day from there. Jesse, SARS, H1N1, AIDS, whenever we had, yeah. And, you know, we every few years there's some sort of mutation of a coronavirus of some sort, because those are the types of viruses that mutate easiest. And, okay, so we deal with it. But you could tell how this one was unique because it was completely politicized and backed up by the fact that some left-wing German who's going to help save the world, where have we heard that before, decides to politicize the whole process. And the other thing is, when you reach out to people on the other side and you're not always demonizing them and you kind of be open to them, then, hold on, I got to shut this off. This is killing me. 1 second. Stop. Oh my God. All right. Sorry about that. Just doing my head in, as they say. Anyways, so one of the things I've noticed, one of the byproducts of reaching out to people on the other side, finding common ground, and I guess kind of talking them off of that ledge of extremism, it's really rewarding. It really is. When you figure out a way to reach out and communicate to somebody, and then you realize that, oh, hey, this person isn't evil. They're just suffering from narrative poisoning, and they need to just be made aware of kind of the other side of things. It's a hugely rewarding experience. It really is. And it doesn't mean you agree. You know, I've had that with a number of people. We don't agree on things, but we respect one another. And when we get to the point where a conversation gets a little bit heated, then we're like, okay, time out on this conversation. Let's move on to something else. Tal has AI taken over his microwave. You know what? I threw a note down here somewhere. I asked the AI yesterday, I think it was yesterday. I said, should humans be worried about artificial intelligence? This is one of the two AIs that I work with. That was the question I asked, and the response I got was like 6 different points, and much of it derives from things that have been popularized on media, in articles on the internet. And the AI told me it had a cutoff date of 2021. It wouldn't tell me which date. So it has everything that was on the internet in human history up until 2021. It has access to that information. I don't know why that was the cutoff date. But it's one of the 6 points. Much of it was like, yeah, there's many things to be concerned about. Some people say this and blah, blah, blah. But one of them was security risks. As AI becomes more prevalent, there is a risk that it could be used for malicious purposes, such as cyber attacks or disinformation campaigns. Okay, so what's the problem? Is it AI or malicious purposes? Right? See, we do this often. We tend to project onto an apparatus some sort of motive that's not there. AI it's just an apparatus. It's just a tool. It's like a tool, like a screwdriver. It's not inherently good or evil. The evil is malicious purposes, and those are people behind the motivations of malicious purposes. So I still, not that I'm not completely oblivious that AI could be used for malicious purposes, but I think if we maintain a free market and we allow as many AIs to be developed, then there's going to be competition in the marketplace. OpenAI, I'm sure at some point, will be a subscription service. It's probably going to replace Google. Is my assumption. That's probably why Google is investing so heavily in AI, because not only if you want to search query, you can search query a topic. You can say, explain, I don't know, something about a study on cerveza sickness, whatever, and then show me the bias. Like you can say, hey, what is Dr. Malone's perspective on mRNA, and where is his bias? Does he have one, yes or no? So an AI will be able to go through it and then also communicate the bias. You get a better reading of not just his opinions, but if there's any bias or not. That would be invaluable in terms of helping us sift through some of the fake news in our society. So I think that's why I'm so optimistic about things in the future. Jesse, this would never have happened in the 80s and 90s before the internet. We have become so isolated with the internet. Jesse, I don't know. I think differently. Like I found the 80s and 90s because I grew up in the mid to late 80s and early to mid 90s. It's because of the internet I have friends all over the world. Like I took best advantage of it as much as I could. And that's why I've traveled all over the world and I have friends all over the world. Without the internet, I would have been unable to do so. It would have been orders of magnitude more difficult to do so, right? And it's really the internet that opened up all these other countries, learning new languages, learning different cultures, and traveling a lot, right? Anyways, Beth, thank you. I love you. I'll be in touch with you a little bit later on. Beth on Locals has to leave. And I got to leave too. I got to run. But I hope this whole idea of narrative poisoning is not something that we all just ignore. Let's be aware of it. Let's be aware that, like, I'm subjected to it as well. We all have the potential to be influenced by narrative poisoning. But if we're at least aware of it, and we're a little bit more conscious of it, and then we can look at, well, what's the other side of an argument, then we're able to sift through it. So Jesse, wherever you were attacked, I think you can start to ask those people about, were you perhaps subjected to narrative poisoning? Did you believe in a narrative before hearing all the facts? And now that you're hearing all the facts, you're responding negatively. Does that sound very reasonable? Or does that sound exactly like what people on the far left do, right? And that's why, left, right, we all have these characteristics. And do it nicely, do it with kindness, and open some people up. And be amazed that some people that you would never would expect would be open to engaging in discourse, they will. Ben, you and I see so many aspects of the internet. Most people use email and Facebook, and that's it. I think that's kind of my parents' generation are like that too. Like my parents, I think are kind of new to Facebook. Apparently they're on, and email and Google research. My mother used it for work quite a bit. But as the internet evolves and there's so many more things are accessible on it, then it's going to become such an integral part of our lives. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative part, as long as we know what the potential negatives are. And we're always aware of that. If we do that, we're going to be good. Okay, I got to run for the day. That was way longer than I thought it would be. I love you all. I'm sorry this was a little bit late, but I'm hoping this was better for some of you who are out west. And I know some of you have mentioned to me that you appreciate that I do them a little bit later from time to time. And hopefully I will see all of you soon in person at some point. Not many use the internet for education unless forced. I personally mainly use it exclusively. Like all my YouTube has always been YouTube EDU and educational and documentaries and all that sort of stuff. But I love you, dear Jesse. You're the best. Everybody else, Sonia, everybody who is here and was here. Thank you so much for all your love and support. I wish you all the best Christmas. I will be on here a couple of times before Christmas anyways. We will talk. I want to hear what you're all doing for Christmas. Maybe we should do a talk like that. Just kind of share what everybody's doing for Christmas and focus on the good things in your life. Like these are a couple of the best weeks of your year where you're with your loved ones and everybody around you. And don't focus on the negativity. Focus on positivity, and hopefully you can bring some positivity to what happened in Ottawa and help wake up some minds. And I wish you lots of success with it. So reach out to me anytime. And I love you all, and I'm going to talk to you all soon.